Welcome to Our Hen House. This is Marianne Sullivan.
And this is Jasmin Singer.
I'm so thrilled that you joined us this week. I think you're really going to love this interview. Jasmin will be speaking with Michelle Rojas-Soto, and she is the managing director at Encompass. And the interview was actually recorded at the Farmed Animal Conference E-Summit, which happened a while back, not too long ago. It was put on by Animal Place, and I think in coordination with some others. And one of the presentations there was a conversation between Michelle and Jasmin about equity, or sadly, sometimes the lack thereof within the animal rights movement. It's a great conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy it.
And this segment and the entire Faces conference was produced by the Plant-Based Network, which is a really cool app that you can get for your streaming device. So you could watch a totally vegan TV network. It's super cool. And I was really, really moved by my conversation with Michelle. And so it's been on my mind. And I finally said, can we just put it on the Our Hen House podcast? And everyone gave their permission. So I'm excited to share that with you. And the bonus segment this week is a little bit different than normal. I know I've been talking about my upcoming book, The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan, for quite a while now, but it is finally just about here. It comes out on December 15th, and that's next week. Actually, that's kind of this week. And so our bonus this week for Flock members will be an excerpt from the audiobook that I was able to record. As always, if you're a Flock member, you will get a link to the bonus segment in your email on Tuesday, the Tuesday after this podcast episode goes up. Or you can always find it on the Flock Facebook group. And if you're not a member of the Flock and you can swing it, you can join for $10 a month at ourhenhouse.org/donate. Maybe you already know this, but between now and the end of the year, which is just in a few weeks, thank God, we are actually having all donations tripled thanks to some generous donors. Every dollar you donate counts as 3. And December is the biggest time for us to fundraise. We raise the majority of our yearly budget in December. So if you're able to join the Flock, and I hope you are, then know that this is not only the best time of the year, but the best time in all of the nearly 11 years, because this is the first time we've had such a bang up type of end of year incentive, tripled.
Why did you say that the new year is only a few weeks away? Thank God.
Because I'm ready for 2020 to be over.
All right. I thought that was maybe it. I feel like everyone is saying this, and I'm a little nervous that on January 1st, everybody will think everything will be different. And I'm sorry to be the harbinger of doom, but it ain't going to be that different.
I know, but
it'll be closer, hopefully.
I'm a sentimentalist, and I believe in the power of arbitrary time markers. So that's why I love birthdays. That's why I love the signifier of end of year. And so, yes, I think you are right. What I'm saying is totally irrational, and I stand by it.
All right. That's not the first time. Well, anyway, it is a tough time, as we all know. We have a pandemic going on, if you haven't heard. And so we're doing our Flock Friday Zoom calls still. Those are at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And sometimes we have guests. Sometimes we just have a chat. We had a great chat the last time about all of the stuff that everybody on the phone call is doing. And I was so intimidated.
Activist-wise, yeah.
Yeah, activist-wise, not every single thing they're doing. I got up, I brushed my, no. And there are amazing people out there. Thank you all. You're doing amazing work. And some of it is hard to do right now. Somebody was talking about putting on potlucks. It's a tough thing to do, but everybody seems to be coming up with alternatives, and I found it very inspiring. So if you're a member of the Flock, you can always check out the Flock Facebook group for updates about those calls and when they're going to occur. And you can always write to us, of course, at info@ourhenhouse.org.
Yeah, at the end of everyone going around sort of popcorn style and saying what they were doing to change the world for animals,
Popcorn style?
Is that not what it was? Well, I called on everyone. I guess it wasn't popcorn. You don't know what popcorn style is?
No, I don't know what popcorn style is.
Now you want popcorn, I bet.
Yeah, I kind of do.
No, it means that you this person goes, and then that person goes, and this person, it's like pop, 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 your popcorn style. Anyway, okay. Right. In any case, afterwards, I read the list of the bullet points that I had written down of what people were doing, and it was illustrating a book for children about animal rights, and
writing a book,
writing a memoir, writing a column for my local magazine, my local newspaper about the animal rights status in my community, and
I don't even remember that one.
Yeah, that was one of Soledad's, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yes, of course.
So anyway, in any case, then I got to you and you were like, I'm not worthy, which, of course you are. But the point is that if anyone is looking for new ways to change the world for animals, like the reason we even started Our Hen House in the first place is because we believe that there is no one right way into changing the world for animals, as is evident from last week's Flock Friday call, because we had several countries on that call and everyone was doing different things, and it's super inspiring to think about it. It was also a good way of my kind of decompressing and focusing on positivity, because that day I think I was like running in the house for starting the Flock Friday. I had just gotten back from taking one of my little dogs to the doggy cardiologist, and she's fine. Well, she has like heart disease, but
she's an elderly Chihuahua.
Yes, elderly Chihuahua. I have two. Well, I have three, but I have two of them have heart disease. It's very common in these little dogs. And in any case, like, I don't want to bore you with all the details, but the following day,
You don't want to bore us with all the details?
I want to bore you with the details. I'll tell you the full story later. Actually, who am I kidding? You already know the full story. You heard it like on text, on the phone, and in person. But for those of us listening, I just want to say that the next day, the doggy cardiologist called me to say, Birdie's blood work came back and it's amazing. And I was like, great. And he goes, by the way, vegan diets are very dangerous for dogs, as is evidenced by her perfect blood work. And I said, I beg to differ. And he said, well, only in like the last few years has there been some studies about grain-free diets. I said, she isn't grain-free. He said, well, it was, through the proteins that are often found in grain-free diets, which are also found in what we call boutique diets or vegan diets.
Like, what is he even talking about? Like this may be this and it may be that, and who knows? Like, this is, it already sounds stupid.
Sorry. And he also was saying that he's not a nutritionist, but he frequently recommends that people take their dogs off of vegan diets. And I was like, but I mean, I don't know what study you're talking about. I later found out it was a study that was funded by like one of the biggest meat-based dog foods in the country, of course. So, and it's because there's such a higher demand than ever these days for vegan dog food because it's healthy. And he said, there's a particular type of heart disease, not Birdie's heart disease, but a particular type of heart disease in dogs that can be linked back to that. And I said, but not Birdie's. And he said, no, not Birdie's. That's like a different type of heart disease. And I said, I really hope that you can hold space for the fact that a plant-based diet can be extremely healthy for dogs. They are not obligate carnivores. Cats are another story. It can be a conundrum.
Oh, let's not get into cats.
Not getting into it. But the point is that, I said, do you know what happens? By the way, I was standing in like my bathroom wearing a towel that I was like in the shower when the phone rang. So this entire conversation is like me in a towel, like hair has shampoo. Okay. Here. So I said, do you understand what happens to like factory farmed animals that you're then recommending be fed to dogs? And he was like, believe me, I'm not a fan. And
I bet he's a purchaser.
I know that I'm saying the most obvious thing right now that like so many of us go through. And I don't know why this got me so
well, because it gets all of us every time it happens. I mean, it's just bad, especially from veterinarians, who are supposed to care about animals. And we all know, like, it's pretty selective for most of them.
And I even said at one point, I'm glad that your assistant did a 5-minute Google search to look up this study, but I've been working in this field for 15 years and I'm happy to send you some other studies if you want. And I know that I was then like because this is in upstate New York. He knows that I've moved from LA recently. I know he had this idea of who I was based on what I was saying, but like it made me.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy making. Mm. And did you mentioned Rose, right? Admittedly, yes. Rose is not the picture of health right now because she's very, very frail, but she's very, very old. And she has been the picture of health for most of her long vegan life.
Right.
And we can all tell stories like that. And, these people just have, well, the thing that really drives me crazy is if they know the thing I just said, so I'm going to say it again because why not? Mm-hmm. It's our podcast. Mm-hmm. I can say it as many times as I want. And if they actually do understand that factory farming is a problem, then are they vegan? I bet they're not. And if they don't understand that factory farming is a problem, why are we even talking to them?
Well, thankfully, the next day, which was last Saturday, everything turned around for me. I got the stick out of my ass and I was so blown away and bowled over by this conference that I was moderating a panel at, virtually the Vegan Women's Summit. I think they had 1,000 people registered from all over the world. And it was basically vegan entrepreneurs who are women or women-identified people who were starting different vegan businesses on every single level you can imagine, from plant-based meats to beauty. In fact, that was what I was moderating a panel on, clean, cruelty-free beauty with Daniela Monet and Tia Blanco. Tia, of course, is 23-year-old surfing sensation, but she also has a beauty company with her sister. And anyway, I logged on, as they said, log on a half hour before, and I'm in the virtual backstage area, and they had these lightning rounds of speakers. And in that half hour, when I was just sitting there waiting to go on, I think 5 countries were represented by lightning fast speakers who were talking about their vegan products and their vegan businesses. Honestly, it blew my mind. If you have the opportunity to get on their mailing list for the Vegan Women's Summit, you're going to want to join this next year. It was phenomenal.
Were there a lot of ethically, was it mostly health or trendy or ethics?
I think a lot of these women are starting the businesses from an ethical baseline. I think that they see opportunities for entrepreneurship, but I think most of them are motivated by either a better planet or, in some of the cases that I saw, animal rights concerns. But it kind of was taking a totally different shape than, for example, the Animal Rights Conference of yesteryear, where it was very much grassroots driven. But this was really coming from a place of how do we take over the world with vegan business opportunities, especially geared toward women and gender nonconforming individuals. It was so cool. They had a Shark Tank element to it. A bunch of entrepreneurs were able to pitch their ideas, and they entered this contest. And I think 3 of them went publicly in front of a panel of judges who were investors, and one of them won $50,000. So, I mean, that's awesome, right?
I am all for people winning money, and I'm all for people making money too if they're doing it ethically. The whole subject of capitalism is a little beyond this, so I won't get into that. But if we're going to have this system, I want to see the right people make. I was in a conversation the other day, and it was talking about funding research and funding researchers who are doing this kind of research into new ways of replacing the food system. Mm-hmm. And somebody made the comment that, a lot of these people then, we'd fund this. And then a lot of these people are going to then leave the research institute and go off and start companies or work for big companies. I was like, well, great. Why would that be a bad thing? If somebody's going to make money, I want it to be vegans who are doing good work.
Yeah. It's, that same day, I had a busy day. I spoke at a conference for the Outshine Film Festival in Florida. And it was on Saturday in Florida, but it was virtual. And I had my giant, fabulous vegan sign behind me. And so the whole talk, when they got to me to ask me about this film I was in called The Bar Mitzvah, wound up being about veganism and how we pivoted the everything in the film to be vegan because there were so many vegans on set. The food was catered by the vegan Jewish deli, Morton Betty's. And the guy who ran the film festival, he goes, oh, only in LA. And I was like, no, there's a vegan Jewish deli in Chicago and in New York. And it was funny because I was able to work that in. And the guy was like, okay, I'm going to order your book. So, it was much more positive than not. So this is all making me think of entrepreneurship, and the Our Hen House supports vegan business program. So let's talk about some of the vegan businesses to hit our radar.
Actually, our first one isn't really a business, but it is a great opportunity for everyone to learn. And I had mentioned earlier in the intro that today's interview was recorded at the Faces Summit, which was put on by Animal Place earlier this year. And you were a speaker, Jasmin. So before we get to the quote unquote product here, tell us a little bit about the summit.
So this was several months ago, maybe in the summer, I'm going to say. And it was a several day long conference. where myself and I think maybe 4 or 5 other interviewers, we all took 4 people each and interviewed them. So one of the people I interviewed was Michelle, you're going to hear that interview in a moment, but we were able to talk about like what the future of farmed animals it means in terms of like the exploitation of them and the liberation of them and how we achieve a better world. And so this was aired live on the Plant-Based Network, which is just, like I said, very cool. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. And I just am always so intrigued by how people are reacting to COVID and creating new opportunities for connection. So it was great to have this sort of like further education, which is something that came up recently on a Flock call. Like, how can we sign up for more workshops and how can we educate ourselves a little bit more about what those things that we're passionate about, especially in our realm, changing the world for animals. I certainly hope that Our Hen House is doing that for those of you listening, but it was a really cool summit.
Yeah, it sounds like it was amazing. And I did catch a couple of the interviews at the time, but I certainly didn't get all of them. And I imagine a bunch of you are the same, or else you didn't pick up on it at all. And once you listen to today's interview, you are probably going to want to hear more. And happily, that has become entirely possible. So here's how it works. You go to Face Summit, and oddly, there's only one S. So it's FACESUMMIT.org. You can find out more about the topics and the speakers, and you can purchase what they call the Summit Pack, and you'll receive access, which will last forever, or actually only as long as you live.
Wow.
That's probably long enough. To all 20 talks. And you can check out who spoke. So I'm sure you're going to be really interested. I think you can actually get 3 of them for free. And then you can purchase this and get the rest of them. And there were experts. And as a bonus, you can get some additional perks from some of the speakers, such as ebooks and other things. So that is a really good, if you want to catch up with everything that's going on in the farm animal movement, that is the way to do it.
Also, we got a suggestion for a vegan business from Flock member Anne Corinne. Do you think I'm saying that right?
I would have said Corinne, but I did look it up. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well,
but we did our best.
Sorry, Anne. But Anne is in the Netherlands, which sounds really amazing right about now. It is a Dutch company with plans to expand to the U.S. And at the moment, the website is in Dutch, and my Dutch is non-existent. But the pictures are going to make you want to buy everything. They have clothes and cosmetics and housewares. So if you're in the Netherlands or read Dutch or just want to get excited about what they're going to do to expand, check out shoplikeyougiveadamn.nl. And that looks super cool. Thanks, Anne.
Yeah, you have to check out that website. I know I did this and you haven't looked at it yet. Their stuff is so good.
I was laughing because you wrote that part of our script here, and you wrote, my Dutch is non-existent for me to say. It was funny. Anyway.
Well, am I wrong?
No.
Are you actually more fluent in Dutch than I had imagined?
No, I'm not even remotely. Though I speak some Yiddish. I can curse in Yiddish.
I don't think that really helps. I don't think they did a lot of Yiddish cursing on this website. Though I can't be sure. I really can't be sure. Isn't it odd how the name of the country is the Netherlands and the name of the language is Dutch? Yeah. Anyway, I'm just ruminating here. Let's make me stop. Stop, Marianne.
Stop, Marianne.
And let's do the interview because this is a really cool interview. Michelle Rojas-Soto is the managing director at Encompass. She has over 18 years of leadership experience in nonprofit and social enterprise work, always focused on equity, systemic change, and community building. She's been an advocate for racial justice, women's rights, disability rights, and LGBTQ plus rights. Among other roles, she was a founding member of Gender Equity in Animal Rights, where she launched the Amplify Career Sponsorship Program for women and gender nonconforming people. And she will be joining Jasmin for this fabulous interview right after this.
Greetings, everybody. This is Jasmin Singer, and I wanted to make sure you knew about my new book, The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan. Look good, feel good, and do good in 30 days. Brand new from Hachette in December 2020. Want to be fabulous? Go vegan. Maybe you're interested in it for the food, maybe it's the animals, or maybe climate change has got you thinking. Whatever your reason, maybe you don't quite know where to start. After all, doesn't going vegan mean you have to give up tasty snacks and cool shoes and a sense of humor and your leather couch? Nope, no way, and well, eventually. Covering everything from nutrition, you will get enough protein, promise, to dating, vegans have better sex, it's true. To fitness, you want to lift a car over your head? Sure. I am joining with the team at Veg News to bust all the myths and giving you all the facts about a plant-based lifestyle. With 30 easy recipes to get you started, the Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan will help you adopt a vegan lifestyle that's better for you, the animals, and the planet. And what's more fabulous than that? Get your copy today wherever books are sold, or go to jasminsinger.com/fabulous. Remember, there's no E on Jasmin. It's JASMINSINGER.com/fabulous. The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan. My guest today is somebody who you might not have heard of yet, but she's about to be one of your very favorite people. She's one of mine. I'm so excited to welcome Michelle Rojas-Soto to Faces today. Michelle Rojas-Soto is the managing director of Encompass, which works to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive animal protection movement, as well as build the impact of organizations and individual advocates. Michelle has nearly 20 years of leadership experience in nonprofit and social enterprise work, primarily focused on the interconnectedness of issues. Prior to joining Encompass, Michelle was managing director of Better Eating International, disseminating progressive vegan education on a massive scale through digital media. She is also a founding member of Gender Equity in Animal Rights. Aside from her work in animal protection, she is committed to fighting prejudice and hate and apathy on all fronts. And I know this about her because I've had the great privilege of working with Michelle recently, and she is really a force like none other. She's been an advocate for disability rights, racial justice, women's rights, and LGBTQ+ rights. She has served on the board of directors for Pearls of Africa Children's Home in Uganda and was co-organizer for LA Tech for Good. She has a master's in biology from Caltech and a master's in business administration from USC. Michelle, like myself, is joining us today from Los Angeles, California. Welcome to Faces, Michelle.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Jasmin. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours, and I've never gotten to interview you today, so this is a really fun experience for me as well, and a real honor to be on this end of it. I know that the participants in the Faces conference are going to get such a lot from all of the incredible insights that you bring to the animal rights movement and beyond. So actually, I don't know this about you. I'd love to start with your vegan journey. What was the impetus for your decision?
Thank you for asking. My vegan journey started about 10 years ago. My sister-in-law was vegan at the time, and she kept telling us about we should do it with her. And my husband and I didn't take her seriously for a couple of years. 8 years ago, almost 9 years now, we watched Forks Over Knife on a Sunday night. And we were in the middle of watching the documentary. I left to go food shopping, and I came back with a cart full of our regular stuff, which was a lot of cheddar cheese, yogurt, eggs, and whatnot. And when I came back from shopping, my husband said, "You have to watch this and don't move from here." So I did. And as soon as we finished the documentary, we looked at each other and we said, okay, well, we're not going to throw away that food because we can't afford it, but we really need to make some big changes. So I ate all the cheese, said goodbye to it. It was my comfort food and didn't look back. And we switched our diet overnight. I didn't know what to cook and what to feed my kids, but I got some books from the library and learned it quickly. And after switching to a vegan diet, then I got interested in the ethical aspects of veganism, and I started reading books about that. And from then on, then the commitment became a lifelong commitment, and here I am.
Wow, that's so cool, and such a good reminder to people that people can come into veganism by way of health. You know, I think oftentimes it can be like a bit frustrating for some vegans to hear that someone is just coming to our movement because they care about their own health. But I have heard time and time again of someone who went vegan for health and then immediately realized that it is the only ethical way forward. And so I'm so happy that here we are now and that you had that journey. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a long career in healthcare before joining all of us in the farm to animal protection movement. So what brought that about, and how did that pivot to working with Encompass?
My career has spanned different areas. So I started in college with this really clear goal of becoming a full-time professor at a university. And I worked in a biology lab since my first year in college, and then pursued graduate school thinking that I would pursue a PhD and become a researcher for the rest of my life. So when I got to graduate school, I felt such a strong disconnect between research in the lab and real suffering out in the world around me. And I did not have the patience to work a lifetime to find out if I had done something that helped someone else. And I just couldn't find that motivation inside me anymore. So I left graduate school with no plan. I found a job doing database work in cancer research nonprofit. Those were clinical trials for children with cancer. And I learned quite a bit, and I started to understand better what motivates me and how I wanted to engage in the world. From then on, I went to business school, and after business school, I still wanted to continue that engagement in nonprofit work. And I also thought a social enterprise was an untapped area, especially back then, for realizing social change. So everything I've done since school has been connecting different areas, different stakeholders, from the for-profit companies to the nonprofits to the social and public sectors. And I think when we realize the potential for those connections, that's when we're going to see the most progress in the 21st century. I think the time for isolated solution finding is over, if there ever was one. Before joining Better Eating, I was working at Children's Hospital in the disability rights space. And Better Eating reached out to me. They had found me on LinkedIn and wanted to connect because of my managerial skills and bringing me into the movement. Up to that point, I was already vegan, but I never considered the movement because what I saw from social media was quite jarring and, how should I say this? Somewhat confrontational and not supportive. And it just didn't feel like the kind of professional environment that I wanted to be in. But the folks at Better Eating, including Ariane, who was our chair at the board of directors at that organization, showed me that it is possible to build what we imagine. And I decided to commit to that, to bring what I can into the movement, find people who see things similarly, and build together. And that's what motivates me to continue to do this work.
That's so interesting to hear from the perspective that from the outside it had seemed just really confrontational and not necessarily inviting. Is that what your experience was once you started working in this field?
To some extent. I definitely have modulated my understanding of the movement after being in it for 4 or 5 years. And that's because I've reached out to, and other folks have reached out to me, the folks that have a big focus on collaboration and lifting each other up. Part of it, I think that, that confrontation that I found from the outside is definitely real. But I think also part of it is the social media culture of vitriol and not really using our emotional intelligence. So I've learned to understand that, that's part of how we're moving as a society. But again, I try to focus on what agency I have to live according to my values, including my workplace ethic and how I want to treat and be treated by my colleagues.
Well, I see that that is an issue that is happening. It's coming up for a lot of people, as I think the animal rights movement and the farm to animal protection movement more specifically is starting to shift. And I've been in the farm animal protection movement for like 17 years, and I see big changes happening right now. And that's partly because of the work of Encompass, which, you know, is just a breath of fresh air. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about your work with Encompass. We see, unfortunately, very few faces of color representing the farm to animal movement. And Encompass surveyed the 11 largest farm to animal protection organizations and found only 38 of 330 employees identify as people of the global majority. That's about 11% versus 38% of the general US population. And I know that Encompass works on two fronts, both on the organizational side with organizational leadership to advance DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as with individuals to advance their own professional life in the animal rights movement. So let's start with the second of these. Encompass offers training and mentorship and other resources to help people strengthen their skills and advance in the animal rights movement in their careers. Can you talk a little bit about the type of work you do with individuals and the need for this brand of work?
Certainly. The thing that we hear most often from people of color working in the movement is that they feel isolated, unsupported, and at the verge of quitting at any given moment. When Ariana started Encompass, she interviewed everyone that she could to try to get a sense of what would be helpful. And she interviewed me when I was a better eating as well. The thing that we all said is we needed to build that sense of community and to find ways to enhance our careers progressively. Many folks of color get hired as community outreach coordinators, and there's very little advancement potential. So we took those things into account, and a year ago, last week, it's been we just reached a year in which we launched the Global Majority Caucus. We originally conceived it as a US-based program, and we called it the People of Color Caucus. But because people of color is a term we use in the United States to refer to non-white people. As soon as we launched it, though, we heard from people, non-whites, in other parts of the world, reaching out and asking if they too could join because there was nothing like it in their part of the world. But people of color is not a term that resonates anywhere else. And so we've reimagined that. We learned from that experience, and we rebranded as People of the Global Majority Caucus. Through the caucus, we offer monthly sessions. Some are strictly community building for people to share, get to know one another. We also offer professional support, introducing topics led by experts such as media savvy, international advocacy, etc. The topics vary significantly based on the interest of the group because they let us know what they're looking for, and also the expertise that the group itself has that can contribute to, like I said earlier, propping each other up. Before the end of the year, we're planning to launch a talent database for advocates of the global majority to list their talents, their expertise, and their interests. And it could be a range of things from speaking engagements at vegan events to board service, leadership positions, etc. We want to create a space where people of the global majority are celebrated, sought out, and recognized for the incredible talents that they bring and the perspectives that so far have not had an opportunity to shine proportionately in the animal space.
Yeah, that's
That's so exciting about the talent database. That's the first time I'm hearing about that. Wow. That is desperately needed. And I know that a lot of the work that you're doing is something that is needed, which includes the work you do with organizations. And I know that when Encompass works with organizations and with the leadership at these organizations to improve, you're focusing on a number of areas. And number one is probably to communicate that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. Clearly, this lack of equity and diversity affects the internal culture of those specific organizations. But how does it affect the movement beyond that? You tend to be clear that making changes within these organizations is not just a matter of doing the right thing, but it increases the movement's effectiveness. So I wonder if you could speak to that and to the importance of working within organizations for both the sake of the organizations as well as for the overall animal rights movement.
Well, at the beginning, you said that the lack of diversity impacts the culture of the organization. I think that's true to some extent, but I think more often the culture of the organization has an impact on diversity or the lack thereof. And so that's one first example in which I can give you that having racial equity contributes to the work. Without a focus on racial equity, we don't attract talent, and talent is desperately needed to create a global movement. Here's something that helps me focus in my work. When we are trying to make the case for racial equity and animal protection, we often hear, why does it even matter who's in the room when we're making decisions? For those of us who need that kind of argument in order to engage, I offer this. In every other human enterprise that we've looked at, racial equity, diversity, and inclusion in decision-making has been shown to have a positive impact. That includes the for-profit sector. It includes politics and the public sector. We definitely care who's leading us in our cities, our states, our countries. And it's also been shown to be the case in other social nonprofit spaces, such as the environmental protection space. And so if we assume that the same human dynamics that are at play in all of those sectors are also at play in animal protection, we can make a straight line between the need for diversity of thought and the need for cultivating that in the animal protection space. Animal protection is a worldwide problem. And so far, we've just scraped the tip of the iceberg here in terms of being effective. Vegans hover at about 2% of the population. It's been stagnant there for a very long time. And so I think we'll continue to see marginal incremental changes unless we cultivate our potential for radical transformation. We need to see that in the United States, and we need to see that in other countries as well. I think it's important for us to also consider that a large part of the institutional animal advocacy space has been cultivated inside the United States. And geopolitics is shifting dramatically. The United States' place in the world has already shifted dramatically. Inside of the United States, we might not yet feel that. But I still consider myself as somebody who has a foot outside of the U.S. because I am Puerto Rican, grew up there until I finished college. And I've traveled and I see and I look to see how other people perceive U.S. citizens. And the tides have changed. I think we need to really consider how we listen more and follow instead of always trying to dictate how things are done. We miss a lot of opportunities for innovation when we think we already know the answers. So as we consider racial equity in our space, the biggest motivator is that when we achieve that racial equity, we will be talking to everyone about veganism, not just people that look and live like us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I just want to replay that over and over again. So well said, so true, and so necessary. And this feels like a good time to talk about the institute that Encompass offers. And the Encompass Institute is something I'll let you chat about, but I do want to say that I attended the first one which was earlier this year, I think in March. Was it March? Yeah, it was right at the beginning of COVID. And so it like immediately had to pivot to be online. And I found it a very, very powerful experience. So can you talk briefly about the Encompass Institute? Because I know that there's another one coming up in October.
Sure. We created the Institute, we conceived of it in late 2019 because people want to bring racial equity into their organizations, but they find that they needed support with making the case for it inside of the organization. We feel very strongly at Encompass that systemic long-term change will only come from cultural transformation inside of our organization. And training does not achieve that. However, training helps us create that case for change with other stakeholders that might not be on board yet. And so we offered the DEI Institute as a 2-day training. It was, like you said, conceived to be an in-person training, but we switched to an online platform because of the stay-at-home orders. At that time, we thought that in-person training was absolutely necessary for learning to occur. And we found, because of everyone who participated and the feedback you all provided, that we were able to deliver online training where people did achieve that reflective space and that introspection and that community that we were hoping to build originally in person. In the training, we focused on root causes of racism, both in our society as well as in the movement. And we spend a lot of time, especially on the second day, focused on how we can create change in the movement. What's our impetus for change personally and collectively? And that commitment is something that no one can choose for you. We have to choose it for ourselves. When we have the commitment, just like we had a commitment towards veganism, when we have a commitment for racial equity, then nothing can stop us. And so we dedicate an entire day for folks to brainstorm, reflect, and share ideas. And hopefully, it certainly was the first time, become accountable to one another in what we wanted to do after we left that training.
It was a very powerful experience. And I guess this is also a bit of a shameless plug, but from that, we started collaborating on an essay collection called Encompass Essays, Pursuing Racial Equity in Farmed Animal Protection. And we took basically the original cohort of the people who attended the Institute, about 12 of us, and we're putting together essays to hold ourselves accountable and to hold each other accountable. There are a lot of white activists, including myself, who are participating in this. I'm lucky to be the editor of the project, and it is a collaboration between Encompass and Our Hen House and Sentient Media. So these essays are running on Sentient Media's website at sentientmedia.org. And every 2 weeks, we have a new piece coming out about focusing on farm animal protection advocates and how they want to center DEI work in our animal advocacy. So do you have any feelings on what you've been observing as these essays have been coming out? Because a lot of our reflections are coming from being trained by you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start by saying that I'm incredibly grateful to you, Jasmin, because this was your idea. I remember when you brought it up at the end of day one in the training, and the idea grew from there, and I could see people's heads nodding throughout day two when they realized that this had potential, and you've been stewarding this project ever since.
Well, thank you. I think that personal narrative is a really important part of social change, and this is a way of using personal narrative as a means to social change by way of your incredible training.
I agree. one thing that we focus on is that change is a journey, as cliche as that sounds, and we probably won't get there in our lifetime. But that's no reason to stop trying. I think it can be very arrogant, frankly, to think that we will be the ones others are waiting for to get us there. I feel a lot of personal responsibility to contributing what I can, but the problems in front of us are huge, and it really does take the entire collaboration of our movement and of humanity to truly bring about change. So one thing I like about the essays is that it takes that personal experience and collectivizes it, and it exposes work in progress. We seem to be fascinated with successes and things that have worked, and that's the narrative that we seem to glorify in our media. And people come out of nowhere with wonderful ideas, but in reality, that's not how it works. It's the things you try over and over, nothing works until finally something does. And so these essays are a celebration of that process of trying lots of different things, many times in anonymity, and seeing what works, cultivating our own power, our resilience, our creativity, and making connections through the process. And there's no substitute for that. And as someone who's been involved in social change and been an admirer of people who are good at social change, I firmly believe we're on the right track with this because we're finally approaching this as a collective effort and not an individual one.
And one of my hopes for this essay collection is that it becomes a trilogy, because I agree, like this essay collection is in a lot of ways like just a moment in time, and it would be amazing to follow the 12 writers throughout like the next 10 years, for example, of how we are putting this work in the center of